Hey, welcome to React Roundup, the podcast where we keep you updated on all things React related. This show is sponsored by Raygun and produced by Top End Devs and Envoy. Top End Devs is where we create top end devs who get top end pay and recognition while working on interesting problems and making meaningful community contributions. And Envoy provides remote design and software development services on a task basis, so clients only pay when tasks are delivered and approved. In today's episode, we will talk about an ecosystem of UI libraries which are available for all the main popular frameworks nowadays, including React, of course, but also Angular and Vue. And we will talk directly with the founder of the company behind those libraries. We are talking about Primetech and the PrimeReact and PrimeAngular, PrimeVue, and other such Prime prefixed projects. My name is Lucas Paganini. I'm your host in the podcast. Joining me in today's episode is Chris Ruin.
Hello, everybody.
And our special guest and founder of Primetech, Cagatay Civici.
Hello, guys, and thank you for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you, Cagatay. So let's just jump straight to it. Could you please provide us with a brief introduction of what Primetech is and what it does as a company? And then we can just jump straight to PrimeReact and how that particular library could be interesting for React developers.
Yeah, sure. So Primetech, I'm the founder of Primetech back in 2008. I started as a hobby project called PrimeFaces. It's a Java Server Faces UI library. And after 10 years in 2000, let's say 17 and 18, we've started with React version. So after React became popular, and we also have other versions. But the companies, we can describe it as a UI component library vendor. At some point, we have done some, of course, consulting and training for our to make a living. But lately, for the last couple of years, we have solely focused on UI component development. And at these times, so we have like close to 15 years of experience in this. And these libraries are open source and free to use under MIT license, more than close to 80 and 90 components, from enterprise level requirements like a complex data table. We also provide simple components like an avatar, a simple button. So not just for a single suite of requirements, we try to cover as much as we can. And it's an interesting story because we have reached like 15 people right now, and the core products are free and open source. Open source, we have also gone through those stages, and where we were having trouble maybe trying to figure out how to turn this popular open source UI projects and make it our main business, so that we can also work on it during the daytime when the light is on instead of just nighttime. Because during the day we had to do a lot of different stuff, and at night we had to work on open source. But things turned out to be very well, and we tried different things, made some mistakes. At some point, we tried to sell the documentation, even, believe it or not, so for $10, and some people bought it just to support us. And I never asked for sponsorship for the Prime projects, because although I know that it's well at many projects, maybe nonprofit projects, we also, although we do it on our end, we sponsor a couple of open source projects. It may, some enterprise companies may look at it like a red flag sometimes, because we're a company, and when we say, okay, we regard it sponsorship, and because I talk to them in conferences, in meetings, they kind of shy away from those kind of. So it's kind of a red flag, because they want to invest in your project, and then they want continuity, right? So we never ask for that sponsorship, and try to find out, like selling the documentation, things like that, working out on other jobs. And since 2015, we've kind of figured that out, how to monetize it. Maybe we can discuss it as well in the context of React. we are basically offering some commercial add-ons on top of the open source core, and that helped us to sponsor the open source core as well. And that's the only thing we do. We develop UI components every day, all day.
That's awesome. So you really went from consulting work up until a point where you are now able to sustain 15 people. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. 15 people being sustained by a project which also provides a very comprehensive free version, and with a very forgiving license, right? So MIT is going to let people do whatever they want with it. So there are definitely several interesting things that we can talk about from a business perspective for anyone listening that might be interested in selling, doing this is what people are currently calling a micro SaaS, right? So micro SaaS being the concept that you can create something small, which can be served as a not necessarily as a standalone, like it sometimes depends on other things to make sense for it to be sold, but it's a smaller-ish product, right? Like we know that in practice there's nothing small about everything that you guys maintain. This is a huge amount of work, like a huge library, but in the sense that you are selling a library of components, that's something that people can easily start. So to get to the point where you guys are, that's years, right? But to start a library and have a go of selling this library with a premium paid version, that is something that theoretically doesn't have a very high bar for people to get started. So there is growing interest from developers to learn from such types of businesses, because it's really interesting. Like there are a lot of folks out there that really care about accessibility, about performance, about so many things that if you're just doing components for a specific project, it's hard to justify putting that amount of effort into making the components super polished. But if you're thinking about it as a product on its own that is going to be sold to many other companies, then that is a path for you to justify spending time in such details. And there are definitely people out there that love doing that kind of stuff. So we're definitely going to go through that. Yeah,
exactly. It worked. I mean, it's a journey. We are trying new things, try to increase revenue, and sometimes fail, try pivot. And I have some interesting things to tell about PrimeReact as well, because it's kind of different than the other libraries. The track record of PrimeReact is a bit different. We can talk about it in detail as well.
Okay, so let's start with what are the things that people can use for free, and what are the things that are behind a paywall?
So we had a paywall in the past, like the style customization, which turned out to be a bad idea, because you had this. We had something called the SaaS team, where you can purchase. There was a visual editor as well, so that the idea was okay, but it really damaged the growth. So that the core is open source and free, but in order to customize the styling deeply, there was a paywall. So we made that open source, and now introducing a newer version as well. So I cannot say a paywall, because I don't think that maybe we should introduce a paywall to the users. It should be an optional add-on. So they should buy it if they really like it, not because they have to, right? So right now we have the open source core, all these libraries, especially on the React as well, the 80 components, maybe 90, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So let's say 80 components, from tables to tabs and everything. And we also provide, the Team Forest templates, where you can go purchase sometimes the templates, application templates, admin templates, mostly the dashboards. We also provide a couple of them. We have a design team that creates and the design, and our teams implement that. So they are on our store, available on our store. We have our own small Team Forest, let's say. And Figma UI kit is also a commercial, so not everyone needs the Figma UI kit, but uh, probably the companies who need it, they can afford it because they have a design team. So the UI kit, the Figma file of the components, is a commercial on the commercial side. And also we have something called Prime Blocks. Probably you know about the Tailwind UI. You know, those Tailwind is the open source core with the utilities, and they provide this nice looking ready to use copy paste ready blocks. They're not really templates, but you just copy and paste. We also have something like that, and that's also a paid add-on. And what else? We also have the professional support, because many enterprise companies, they just want a contact where they can, instead of GitHub, email, they can just contact us using a private issue tracker. So that's so 4 things I can say, but a couple of more are on the horizon. Like Figma to theme generation plugin is on the horizon, a new visual theme editor, and also the Prime Blocks, the new version is also maybe, and we are also planning to come up with some UI builders kind of tool. So mostly tooling, let's say, add-ons on top of the core. But of course, there's no paywall, and people can get what they need from the library.
Gotcha. So that exposes a really big challenge, right? Because if the core functionalities are there, and I can also say that you guys are very generous in the way that you present your products, because if you go to PrimeReact website, for example, there isn't too many call to actions telling me that there is a paid that there are paid add-ons to it, right? It just really looks as if it's something free. And there is a banner up top, especially now talking about the Spring sale that you have for the templates. But besides that, the amount of call to actions for purchasing things is very, very minimal. So I imagine that this also increases the challenge, right? So you're trying to make something that is very friendly for those that just want to try out the free version, while at the same time you want people to know that there are paid add-ons because you need to support 15 people, right?
If you go to the website, there's no banners or sponsor us. So we want to make it clean. So that's one of the reasons. And our first preference is the growth. So we need to have a big user base for the project. And then, because sooner or later, once they're installed to their project and start playing with it and seeing the value, at some point, they will realize that they may need some paid add-ons. So the highest priority are the, adoption and the growth and familiarization with the components rather than monetization. That's something I learned through the years. Once you have a user base that, you have the community, at some point, I mean, we have even some users, that purchase some stuff from our store without the need of using it. They just want to support us. And of course, there are some people who want a refund. Of course, there are different kinds of people. But, that's the idea. We want a clean user interface mostly. And they should, we don't want to put it in there, make it the highlight, just there. But of course, there's always room for improvement, trying new things, moving things around in the UI, different. But we don't have any people for sales. That's interesting. Out of the 15 people, 1 person is for customer relations, mailing, invoicing. Another 14 people are for developers and designers. So the product kind of sells itself because it's the power of open source. That's why we love what we love.
Awesome. So just to recap from the React developers' point of view that might want to use this library. So the main issues that this library solves are the speed at which developers can have well-written, performant, and accessible components in their UIs, right? So you want a date picker, there you have it. You don't need to create it from scratch. You want, like, there are just so many of them. I can't even list them here as an example. There are just too many components. But yeah, And basically, most of what you can think of in terms of design UI elements, you're going to find in PrimeReact and the other Prime libraries for other frameworks. So I wonder how this compares to other UI libraries out there. Like, why would someone that is just starting a project and they decided to use a UI library? So this is not the question anymore. The question is which UI library to use.
Yeah.
Why would they use Prime?
Yeah, in general, so to begin with, PrimeReact's case is different. So we had the PrimeFaces. It became the most popular one for its own context, Java, web Java development. We had the PrimeNG. After the official first part, Angular material, it became the second most popular. PrimeVue is now the hottest UI library for Vue.js. And so when we turn to the PrimeReact, we've just realized that we made a mistake along the way. So something didn't click with the community. So people that started after us got more popular. And so we, like a couple of months before, we went back to the drawing board saying, okay, we are doing something wrong. And we have decided to go back to the drawing board, come up with a new plan, which started, the implementation started yesterday, actually. So one of the issues with the PrimeReact was this old theming, which is using Sass, and you had to compile it, and theme switching functionality. You had to switch some CSS. Since there were some stuff, legacy stuff from 2000s, 2008s and 10s, because when we started, there were no CSS variables, there were even no Sass. So if you do it for a long time, you face with a technical debt. Luckily, PrimeVue had that sorted out, and this is the turn of PrimeNG and PrimeReact. So probably in June, we will have a new reboot called monorepo. We are moving to a monorepo. There will be a new package at PrimeReact/core. So the main difference between PrimeReact, and the main difference that will be, because the newer version will have it, but the idea is different. So as I mentioned, I'm doing this for 15 years, and I've met all sorts of users. So I call it the three types of people mostly. So some users prefer, they're not really good with design. But they want to get something done. They just pick it off the shelf, like the date picker you mentioned, and it looks good, and it does the job, right? And there's another types of people. They want full customization. They want full control. They want to feel like they can change everything easily. And there's a third group. They don't like UI components, and they create everything from scratch themselves. And even we try to get some people from that clan, let's say, tribe, to our land, because it really speeds up. Because, I mean, maybe you've used some third-party library, right? And because when you import it, when you npm install it, you get their problems and bugs and their issues, the maintainers' issues and things like that. You get all the problems with it as well, not just the features. So some people who got burnt by it, maybe they had a bad experience. So they try, from that point on, they create their own stuff. But they're not that many, I would say. But probably some corporates with their own design systems, they run. So what we did is that, okay, there's no single solution, right? So we created this idea called, we have two modes, styled mode and unstyled mode. So PrimeReact also has it. It's not as polished as the other versions, though, but it will be. So the styled mode will be this nice-looking API with design tokens, Figma integration. There will be a nice API with different presets, like you can switch from Material to Bootstrap, because Bootstrap-like designs, we have our own designs set, so that you can get that style, get that component with a nice-looking UI, and you can customize it easily. That's the styled mode. If you compare with the recent trends in the React, especially because React and Tailwind really fits very well, because when you compare with Angular Vue, there's no built-in styling in React, right? So, and the Tailwind really fixes that issue perfectly. It's like a perfect combination, so that you can create components that doesn't need an external styling. You can use Tailwind with it. So that's why when we realized that Tailwind-based UI libraries for React got extremely popular, so that gave us idea. So we created this unstyled mode. In unstyled mode, we do not render any CSS class. Usually components have like P dropdown, or let's call it select. usually you can, when you open the DOM with the developer tools, you see like p-select, p-select header, p-select option, classes like that, right? Which you need to know, you need to customize. In that case, we remove them. We don't render any class, and we get Tailwind classes from an object. We call it PT. That's called the pass-through. Pass-through lets you access the component internals. So components are like off-the-shelf black boxes, right? You call them like select, and it gives you select. But in the end, internally, it has many different DOM elements, like the panel, the portal, the options, the filters, and everything. We provide access to these internals using the pass-through properties. And the pass-through is like a JavaScript object. It has like header, option, panel, overlay, shadow, things like that. And it gives you the ability to pass Tailwind classes. So we created the same style with Tailwind as well, which means that if you get that two people, one prefers that, styled mode and theming, and if they're heavily using Tailwind, now you can use Tailwind to style the entire PrimeReact library as well, which is great because it will really fit well within the rest of your application. You don't need to learn any new API. You can just use Tailwind. And PrimeReact provides it. I'm not sure if there's another library that can do both style and unstyled. Plus, you get all the accessibility features, a huge community, and everything as well on top of PrimeReact. So it's quite different from what people. The scope is kind of bigger, but the idea is on flexibility and customization.
That's really, really interesting. I think I got to take over for Lucas here for a bit. I'm not sure where he went, but yeah, that's it's been amazing to me how Tailwind has expanded as a library, and really anybody who makes an integration with them seems to get some of that kind of that love. That's quite interesting. I really like that kind of the option that you give, because I think a lot of other UI components, they don't offer that. It's sometimes you get like, they'll give you like only like one part, perhaps like the accessibility or the performance, but they say, you have to do all the styling, right? Or the others are very opinionated with styling, and then they say it's very, it makes it very difficult to add your own styles.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we look at competition and even our user base, okay, when I do an announcement that, okay, now you can style the components with Tailwind, guys, and we don't want to do all this work yourself, so that our team has created these presets. To give you an example, and our team went nuts and styled everything twice with two different presets. One is with the different look and feel. So we have two presets for the Tailwind version, because we don't want everyone to style it themselves. But as you mentioned, Chris, there's these, when we announce it, some people in our community say, oh, okay, Tailwind rocks, and we use it, we love it. And there are some people, they say, okay, we use Tailwind, we don't want to use it. We don't like that approach because these classes become really long and things like that. And then we don't want to lose anyone. We want to offer different style, and it's mostly the styling. I mean, the React area, they provide accessibility. There's a headless approach, but still you have to do a lot of things. I mean, it's like we are trying to find the best of both worlds. There's only material on the libraries in Angular, React, and Vue. But this material is like a design system. Why we need to base on it? I mean, PrimeReact is kind of best of both worlds, and after years of experience, we tried to come up with different ideas so that people can pick their combination. Okay, styled mode with Tailwind, unstyled mode without Tailwind, and things like that, So that's what makes it different. Because in React ecosystem, what you see is that they're either opinionated, they're either Tailwind, they're either not, they're either primitives and things like that. Hopefully, PrimeReact with the recent version will be finally picked up by the community, and hopefully we will hear more about PrimeReact, because it really worked for other communities, and it is the time of PrimeReact, and we are really excited about it. Three developers will start working on the new version of PrimeReact soon. We'll see.
Very cool. Very cool. So Lucas, we were just talking about how they're offering a super flexible way with you can take the Tailwind sort of presets, or you can just say, I just want the components, I'll style them myself. And I think it's quite a wise decision, because you're opening your library to any type of developer. Yeah, I really like that approach.
Yeah, making it as ergonomic as possible so that nobody has a reason not to try it, right?
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of work though, because scope is larger. I mean, if I can do a Tailwind UI library focused, I mean, just maybe avatar and selects and things like that. If you check out headless UI, just a couple of, but it's popular, you know. But the scope is larger, the work is harder, but it's more rewarding because it will be a wider audience for us. Even the corporates with design systems. I mean, we have many people who are tasked with creating their own UI libraries for their companies because they have their own design system. And they're now using the PrimeReact and PrimeVue in unstyled mode. And they are creating wrappers. Let's say instead of Prime Select, it's like My Select. That My is the organization name. And they just wrap it and they inject their own styling. And they get accessibility out of the box, and they can make the management happy because they don't need to write a data table from scratch.
Awesome. And Cagatay, let's see how many business lessons we can give to people that want to create libraries and have a very flexible free plan, while at the same time being able to pay their bills, right? Let's not consider UI libraries because we don't want more competitors for you, jokes aside. But let's just say someone is creating a utility library. For example, I think a library that is really interesting is RxDB. Not sure if you guys ever heard of it, but the idea is they used RxJS, which exposes lots of reactive extensions for JavaScript. This is what RxJS means, reactive extensions for JavaScript. So they created a bunch of adapters between local state and RxJS. So if you're using RxDB, what it provides you is a very easy to use database wrapper for local state. So it creates a wrapper for IndexedDB and also creates a wrapper to automatically pull in data from your remote resources. So for example, let's say that you're creating a CRM. So a CRM is the kind of thing that you have so much data and there's so much that you want to do with this data that perhaps it doesn't make sense to treat it as a normal regular REST API where everything that you need to do, you have to ask the backend. So instead, maybe you really want to just query the backend to have the latest refreshed data and perhaps have a WebSocket connection to it. But what you really want is for the data to be locally so that you can manipulate it in the front end. So I'm just giving you an example of a very specific library that, as we can see, there are lots of companies that might be interested in that functionality, and it's not UI related, right? So there are lots of room for people that want to create libraries and sell them. You don't necessarily need to create libraries that are specific to UI components. There are other utilities that you can create.
Definitely.
And what I'd like to know from your experience doing that as a business owner is, how would you recommend someone that wants to start a micro-SaaS business from scratch, building a library and eventually being able to make a living out of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so maybe that in my case, when I started this, it was like a hobby project. I had no idea of turning to a business. And at some point, the clients tried to contact us for some paid development and consulting and trainings. And I just realized, okay, maybe there's something in this. But lately the stuff we do in the future, we are trying to, on our end in UI landscape, we are trying to decide if that can be profitable, if this feature can be turned into, let's say, a tool support maybe. For example, because you provide APIs, and tooling is interesting idea, because when you provide an API, you provide these features, and at some point, the developer experience may need some enhancements, and at that point, that tooling, because with tooling, with like the microservices, because instead of one time, my suggestion would be that it should be a recurring revenue, right? Because you can, maybe some month you can sell 5 licenses, or you let's say 5 invoices, but there's no guarantee that you can get it in the next month, so that you cannot rely on this business, leave your job. So it should better be a recurring thing. That's what our experience demonstrated as well. So if that, like a tooling chain, if that can be developed for that library, for that utility, that would be great. And if you see some examples, of course, many of my experiences on the UI, utilities might be different, but the utilities are just like that RxDB, as you mentioned. Utilities are great for different integration modules, different extended utilities will be great. And my suggestion would be, of course, that anyway. So what we also did was some long-term versions, like the bigger corporates do it as well. So if you have that utility, but many corporates cannot upgrade every time, so they usually wait for 6 months, a year. They want the long-term support versions, because we also provide the LTS versions, and they are kind of paid add-ons as well. So that utility, you create new stuff, maybe you break some stuff, and that you can still provide the long-term support versions in the runtime. And the corporates and medium-sized companies will definitely go on that route, and they can continuously provide payments every year, every month on that version, because unlike the startups and freelancers, they cannot jump to the newer version as soon as possible. So I would say tooling, some support to older versions of that utility library, that would be great. And plugging, like integration with other environments, like optional paid add-ons. And I would never suggest a paywall, because it really, it doesn't sound good, and people don't like paywalls initially. They just make sure that they adopt your library and make sure they are happy with the core functionality, so that you can start offering some paid add-on services, integrations, extra features, long-term support, and you name it. But of course, it depends on the context and different UI. I mean, UI is different, backend services, backend authentication. For example, you're doing authentication, you create the 10 different modules for different services, different data integrations. Because I know a startup who does it. They provide 2 integration modules as free, and for data integration, and 8 other integrations are paid, and things like that. So different features, and so on. It's kind of fun. Try to monetize it, and if you succeed, it's really fun. If you fail, you try to look for alternatives.
And what about the fear that people have of first impressions? How much do you think that this is relevant? Because I don't want to ignore first impressions. I think they are relevant. If somebody tries your library and then have a bad experience, they might try it again sometime afterwards, but they might never try it again forever.
It's really, really important, because in our case, okay, people usually evaluate libraries, right? They evaluate PrimeReact, they do the install, they put a couple of components, they evaluate the competition. And if they face any issue during setups, they do not get any response. So first impressions are really vital. And if you lose them, it's really hard to win them back. Maybe you need to wait for their other project. And if their DX is quite good on their previous project, it's really hard, but it's challenging. We have done it a couple of times in the past, that we had some bad impressions initially, but we changed the developer experience entirely. But it takes time. As I mentioned, you need to go back to the drawing board, You start with the flow, because lately we are not promoting PrimeReact as much as we were doing in the past, because lately we have updated the showcase, all the documentation, theming, and everything, which is not even live yet, actually. So we have some cool stuff that we didn't bring live. So that's why we are kind of, just like you mentioned, the person, if we just promote it now, the users will come in and just, okay, this is cool, but my preference is better. So right now we are holding some of these features as well. And also, I would suggest for open source developers, if they want growth, they need to pay special attention to if they're using Discord or forums where they try to gather community, build up a community, they need some extra attention to the newcomers, the new members, because if they just have a problem initially during setup, they will leave and probably never come back. So that those kind of users need some special attention. But yeah, and the developer experience, if you use it now, will you suggest that, because open source is really from year to year, so you like it, you suggest it to your colleague and your friend, your developer friend, okay, I use this library, it's cool, try it, and things like that. Yeah, developer experience is our focus. So that's why we stopped doing features. We just realized even if we had some virtual scrolling frozen columns, it is not affecting our growth. Let's just improve the showcase, the documentation, tooling, ID plugins, and then because we can create features anytime, let's focus on the developer experience.
Gotcha. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. It's not just about supporting tons of components. It's about the way that you use them. Just like any company, there are many monster SaaS out there in the sense that they do everything, but at the same time, it's just so terrible, the experience. There are a few, for example, CRMs that they just attempt to do everything in the world, but when you try to use it, and that's the selling point, right? Like you can do everything there, but when you try to use them, you most frequently run into a not so great user experience. So I think this is a similar case. It's best if you have less things, but they are polished enough that people are going to use them and they're going to enjoy using it. Otherwise, if you just put too many features and they're not polished, then at the end of the day, you don't really have anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we realized and went back to the drawing board, as I mentioned. And now we are coming back, hopefully.
Gotcha. So would you say that looking back, you would rather wait a little longer to launch, but make sure that the version 1 is very, what's the word that they use? They're lovable, right? People even say that the MVP is the old deal. Now you need to have a minimum lovable product. Would you say that this is true? Or because there are also lots of people that say, if you feel proud of what you're publishing, then you took too long to launch. So we have two very, very different views on when to launch a product.
Yeah, on our side, the UI library development never ends. So you cannot say PrimeReact is done. You can never say it because it started in 2017. And what is done? I mean, because there will always be a new feature, a new component, a new something. So we were rewriting our theming for Vue version, and now it's coming to Rec as well. And at some point, that's a major jump between version 3 and 4. And then we have realized that we are adding some other features that were not in the scope of that version, because that version was supposed to be the new theming, the flexible theming with Figma integration and so on. And when I check out our roadmap, I've seen stuff like that can be done in the version 4.1, version 4.2. And it was supposed to be launched in March, but it was launched this week, so 2 months delay. But it would have been delayed more, like 2 more months, maybe. So in a team meeting, I said, okay, guys, if we try to accomplish all these, it will be like end of year. And we cannot get it out of the box. So exactly, I'm more like an MVP guy, iterative guy, because these libraries are huge. and we always try to come up with something working. We can probably, for the PrimeReact version, the next version, we will create maybe 10 sets of components like tabs, inputs, accordions, dialogues, essentials, let's say, essential set of UI components. And then for every week, we will try to come up with a new component and tail integration accessibility done. Because it will be, we will never release it in time. And there is no complete, it will never be the perfect as you want it. That's another lesson that we learned. If you try to make it perfect, and the time flies by. And it will never be perfect anyway, until the people start using it, providing feedback, you polish it. So I'm more like on the MVP side of the things.
Cagatay and Chris, I think we should start wrapping up. We're already at 42 minutes of core content. But before I do that, I would like to ask just a catch-all question. Is there anything that you believe I should have asked that you think it's really relevant for the audience of the show, but perhaps I haven't touched upon yet?
I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, I think the best question was how PrimeReact was different from other libraries, because when we compare with Vue, we compete with maybe one or two libraries. With Angular, we also only compete with Angular Material, which is first party. But in React, I mean, there are many libraries out there. I mean, which one to compete against? If I can tell you 5 very good libraries. I mean, so that question was really nice. But again, PrimeReact ideology, the idea is kind of different. And the common question I get is that how React component development is different than Angular or Vue and other libraries. I think React and Vue is the easiest. Angular is a bit tricky to implement components, and it's quite a pleasure to work with React and Vue. And other than that, that monetization, because we have an interesting story how to turn this open source, the thing you love, into the thing you make a live with, making a living. That we also discuss it. And other than that, I cannot really think of maybe other things. But I'm really excited to show you the next version. Maybe we can do a small, maybe quick lightning. Just give us a couple of months after summer. We will launch the new PrimeReact, and maybe hopefully you will try it in your next project, in your next React project.
Definitely. I will be waiting for that. You are very welcome to get back to the show and tell us all about the changes that you made to make the library more easy to use for React developers. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
All right.
Thank
so
you, guys.
Let's do some promos. Chris, would you like to get started?
Yeah, sure. I'll post something I haven't posted in a while, which is my my Udemy. I don't know if I can. I'll post the link. But yeah, so I have a few courses, not all React, but just stuff. My courses come from experiences I've had as a full stack dev, and like where I got really stuck and couldn't find anything. And yeah, I also have a policy, because I know there's probably a lot of students listening, or people who don't have the money to spend on courses. If you email me, I will set you up with a free coupon code for the course. So, but yeah, check them out. I think they're interesting, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't make them. But yeah.
Awesome. Okay, Cagatay, what about you? What would you like to promote?
Yeah, we currently, I think we have a discount at our Prime store, 50% off on everything. If you need a nice looking template, some Prime blocks, if you need a Figma, they're really quite affordable these days. So if you, should I type it, or should I mean, if you go to the PrimeReact website, you can see that there's a top bar notification at primereact.org, and it's 50% off on anything. And if you like to support open source, you're welcome. But also we have some free templates as well, if you like to check some before trying the premium stuff.
Awesome. I just sent a link to primereact.org in the show notes, in the comment section, and also a link for Chris on Udemy. so that everyone can also check that out. On my end, I don't have any special promos, just gonna mention the companies producing the show again. So there are many other podcasts produced by top end devs. If you're interested in other software development subjects, there are shows about Angular, Vue, Career. There are many other podcasts available in the top end devs universe. So definitely check that out if you're interested in hearing about other subjects while you're working out, driving, whatever. And also, again, Unvoid. So if you are a company or you know a company that is looking to either augment their staff or just create an entire system from scratch, then definitely check out unvoid.com, unvoid.com, because they have a very interesting business model, which allows clients to only pay after tasks are delivered and approved. So I think this is going to be it for me in this episode. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. I hope this was valuable to you in your journey as a React developer, and also with all the super valuable, in my opinion, business insights from Shatai about how he built this business and made it lucrative and made it work in its own without requiring consulting work or any other sources of income. So I think this is highly valuable for lots of developers. I hope it was valuable to you, and I will see you in the next episode.